as you mentioned there at Balls, you're in the race for the Labour leadership. You're, if the papers are to be believed, you're not in the driving seat at the moment. How would you feel? How do you feel about that?
We're waiting to see how the votes are counted, because this is, I think, the second largest political election for a candidate we have in our country. Only the London mayor election has a bigger vote, and there will be hundreds of thousands, potentially millions of people voting, and the votes are happening now. Nobody knows what's happening, and so we'll have to wait and see. I've been fighting very hard to win every vote. We've been travelling all around the country. Today we've been in Cardiff earlier in the day, now in Woking, and looking forward to talking to what will turn out to have been tens of thousands of Labour Party members and trade union members over the last few weeks. So we'll wait and see what the result is, but I'm fighting to win.
Of course, Woking is not known, or Surrey in general is not known for its support of Labour. It's a weak area for you. Some would say, why are you wasting time in Woking when you could be targeting areas with a better Labour support?
I've been to pretty much everywhere in the country, from the Medway towns in Kent to Cornwall to Glasgow. And there's lots of Labour Party members, not just in Woking and across Surrey, but also in neighbouring counties. We've got people coming from Basingstoke to the meeting today, from all over that part of the south east into the beginning of the south and the west. So we're hoping for a good turnout, and there's lots of people who really care about the future of our public services, who are worried about jobs for young people, who are seeing in Labour and Conservative areas new school buildings being cancelled by the new coalition, and they want a Labour government which can stand up and say loud and clear, there's an alternative, a better way, a fairer way. That's what I've been doing in the last few weeks in the leadership election campaign, and that's what I'm going to be trying to persuade the members coming along tonight in Woking to give me their first preferences for the Labour Party leadership.
Of course, this campaign seems in the last few weeks to have turned into is the Labour Party going more to the left, or with David Miliband, is it sticking to the right? You haven't got airtime on that argument, it seems. Where do you stand on the issue, and where do you see the Labour Party going in as brief a sentence as you can possibly do it in?
Look, it's very easy to characterise this race as Miliband versus Miliband, right versus left. Look, actually what we need is a credible candidate, strong on the economy, clear on investing in public services and fairness, but knows that you can't do that unless you can win the trust of people in business, in the city, in financial markets, as well as families up and down the land. And that's what I've been doing for the last few weeks. That's what I can do, and that's why I'm getting lots and lots of support around the country.
But on that point, you couldn't decide before the election on, you decided on going down the route of saying, well, we have to invest more in the economy as the recession still holds a grip. And yet the coalition are trying to say, well, cut back on the public spending, and that's the way to get us out. Are you still sticking with that tone before the election, or have you moved away a little bit from the fact of the matter is that the country's broke?
The country's not broke at all, and of course we need to get our deficit down in the next few years, but the disastrous way to try to do that is huge cuts now in investment, in school buildings, in house building, because at a time when in America and Europe their economies are not growing strongly, when the private sector's not investing, the public sector's got to keep the economy moving. And the opposite approach, cutting now, look, that was tried in the 1980s. It was actually tried by Ramsay MacDonald back in 1931, and it failed. It led to rising unemployment, to the deficit getting worse. You either learn the lessons of history or you repeat the mistakes. I think it's making a huge mistake, and I think it's very important that Labour says there's an alternative to these cuts to rising unemployment, and we should set that out.
Of course, over the next couple of weeks, Surrey has their chance to give their opinion on the health service with this white paper that's coming forward, and you're vehemently opposed to this, aren't you? You don't agree with what the coalition want to do.
Well, listen, what I've been doing is listening to doctors and nurses, people who work in public health, in preventing people getting sick, in tackling smoking and obesity, and across the country, everybody's saying that what the coalition's plans will mean is the breakup of the NHS, huge unfairness, a lack of investment in public health and prevention. I think handing over all the power to GPs to spend money, but more than that, to then have them hand that over to private companies to do it on their behalf, I think it's very dangerous and very divisive and very risky. And I think you'll hear increasingly in the coming months people across the NHS saying, don't put our health service at risk.
The other thing is that you've been associated with Gordon Brown. You're seen as his protege, if you like. Has that, do you think, been a handicap to you in this race?
Of course. Look, we didn't win the election. Gordon Brown was the Prime Minister. And Ed Miliband, one of the other candidates, was working with Gordon when I arrived in 1993. He was the one who wrote Gordon Brown's manifesto. But I'm probably seen more as somebody who stood up in the last few years and defended Gordon Brown. But to be honest, I was quite proud to do so. I think Gordon didn't get everything right by any means, but he made some hugely important calls on the economy to nationalise the banks, which are lauded around the world. So in the end, in politics, being loyal is important. I think if people like me hadn't stood by Gordon Brown, the country would have been in a more difficult position. I've got no regrets. But what I hope is that people will not look backwards, but look forward and say, who is the candidate who is best able to lead the country, also to take the argument to the Conservative Liberal coalition, who I think, to be honest, are making terrible mistakes. There'll be many people there working and around Surrey saying, we voted Liberal Democrat, and what did we get? A Tory government. That's not what we expected. And we need a leader of the Labour Party who can put the alternative. That's what I've been doing. That's what I'm going to carry on doing.
And have you been speaking to the former Prime Minister on tips about this campaign and what to do?
No, to be honest. Been too busy travelling around the country, talking to members' meetings and talking about the future. And
any comments, just do you keep in touch with Gordon Brown at all in even just a friendly manner?
Well, of course. Look, I've spoke to Gordon a couple of times in the last few weeks, but not on a regular basis. But I mean, he was an old friend of mine, and I know Ed Miliband and I both had chats with him. Probably David Miliband has done, who knows? But we're not really thinking about the past, we're thinking about the future.
And how's he getting on in retirement?
Sorry?
How's he getting on in retirement? Well, retirement from Prime. I know he's still an MP,
well,
of course.
Well, what normally happens when people retire is they write their memoirs. And as I said, it's in politics, writing your memoirs is the equivalent of getting your bus pass. But I think Gordon Brown decided rather than writing his memoirs, he'd write about the economy. And so I think he's got something happening on that in the next few months. I'm not quite sure, to be honest.
All right, great. Well, listen, best of luck with the rest of the campaign. Thank you very much for